Wendigo encounter. I'm not sure if this is the right place to post this, but I'm scared shitless. After hearing stories and looking stuff up online, I'm fairly sure it was a Wendigo. Me, my son, and my girlfriend were attacked by something. We were camping up in the northmost area of Washington. My girlfriend is incredibly superstitious, so she insisted we brought weapons. So I had my combat knife, a 12-gauge shotgun, and she brought a .22 rifle alongside a newly sharpened machete. Our son was just 3 years old at the time. She and I were set on edge from a park ranger who seemed very tense and uneasy, who stopped us and instead of confiscating our weapons told us to be careful and stay safe, then sent us along our way to the camp. When we got there, we were informed that several visitors had spoken about some unnatural noises and a pale creature that would mimic voices and sounds of people who weren't talking or seemed to be distracted. I laughed and put that idea out of my head, thinking to myself, there's no way, they're fucking with us, but I knew better. So we then reached the area we were going to set up camp. We immediately got a fire ready to light and set up our tents and bags. I fed my son as my girlfriend ate a snack. We decided to get a lay of the land, so me and my girlfriend hiked around for about an hour or so. I had one of those baby carrying backpacks, and my son started to get real heavy. Everything seemed normal until I saw something down the almost path we were on. We walked closer to investigate, and I saw drag marks. It looked as if someone had killed a buck. There was a whole outline in the dirt, with a small dried pool of blood, as if someone grabbed it from the antlers and pulled. This wouldn't be possible for any man to do. The buck, or whatever it was, would have been way too big for that. Shaken, we rushed back to base camp and restarted the fire and hurried back into our tent. Too afraid to leave since it was dusk. By now we stayed inside the tent. My girlfriend put our son to bed. Eventually, probably from exhaustion of fright, we fell asleep. What must have been hours later, I awoke to a faint rasping noise that sounded like a child crying. I gazed outside in confusion and saw the outline of a creature that seemed to be a buck, standing over something. It seemed to be about 20 feet away, but at a closer glance, it had unnaturally long limbs for a buck, and it was eerily tall. In sudden fear, I unloaded 2 shots into the creature, and heard a loud, blood-curdling cry. My girlfriend awoke screaming to the shots I had fired as I tried to explain what I had heard. To my surprise, the animal hadn't moved an inch. Then I noticed the stains on the side of the animal. It looked like blood was running down the edge, and lots of it. It stared at me deep in my eyes as I became petrified with fear. A sinister feeling of dread fell over me, as if I knew I couldn't move. I thought to myself, what if it starts to bolt towards us? Just then, this tall, decrepit, demonic thing seemed to whisper something. I couldn't exactly tell what it was saying, but it seemed to have said,
I need more children.
My girlfriend screamed, asking where our son was. We blacked out. In the morning, we awoke to park rangers at our campsite. We didn't see our son anywhere. We told the rangers that he was missing, and they started a search party. I explained what had happened, and strangely, they seemed to believe it. The one who seemed to be older by at least a decade pulled along the one we had met earlier and whispered in his ear. I only heard a single line, and I'm not even sure if what I heard was correct. It sounded like she said,
"It's getting bolder."
They didn't seem to want us by ourselves, so they waited with us while they continued the search. We stayed in a log cabin for 3 days with the forest ranger, when suddenly, some rangers came into the cabin, saying they couldn't find our son. My girlfriend starts to sob. I start to hate myself, thinking I could have done something if I wasn't frozen in fear. We rushed outside only to find some injured and frightened police officials. The rangers wouldn't tell us anything of what happened or what they saw, or why the cops were scared shitless. All we know is that we don't have a son anymore. God, please, whoever goes into that forest next, please, please, don't bring your kids with you. This is Wendigo Stories. When I was young, I often spent parts of my summer with my grandmother in her home out in the country. It was my favorite place in the world, and I always looked forward to the week-long stays of gardening, baking, late-night fires with s'mores and ghost stories, and enjoying having my grandmother all to myself. There was a pond not far from our house where I would sometimes go to swim. It was home to quite a few frogs, and at night they made the most incessant noises. I complained to my grandmother only once, saying I couldn't enjoy the night breeze with all that racket. She took me on her lap and told me a story about an old man and old woman who lived near the lake. The old man couldn't stand the singing of the frogs, but his wife told him they kept the Wendigo away, and to harm them would be unwise. Well, he didn't listen, and set about methodically catching all the frogs in the lake. It was a process that took some time, but it did not stop until he had rid the lake of the pesky amphibians. That night, without the protection of the frogs, he and his wife were slaughtered by the Wendigo, a vicious, whip-like demon creature with elongated fingers ending in razor-sharp talons and rows of silver teeth as thin and keen as needles. I wrote it off as another one of her ghost stories, though she seemed more serious than usual about it. I never complained about frogs again, mostly because I grew to enjoy them and put the story out of my mind. In fact, I had forgotten all about it until it came up this past spring in a Native American literature class I was taking in college. The mention of the Wendigo sparked the old memory of my grandmother's story. I thought she had made up the word. I didn't realize there were stories about this, originating in Algonquin legends. Eager to connect something from my childhood to the topic, I googled it, only to find that my grandmother had apparently been mistaken. There was nothing I could find about the story she had told me, nor any references of frogs providing protection from the Wendigo. In fact, the Wendigo of legend seemed very little like my grandmother's version. They were said to be insatiable, craving human flesh, and sometimes created from the forms of people who had resorted to cannibalism to survive. Descriptions varied, but they sounded almost nothing like my grandmother's boogeyman version. I actually chuckled as I read it, almost a bit embarrassed by how badly my grandmother had messed up the original tale. I changed residences this summer, moving to a newly built 1,000-square-foot duplex on the edge of town. The other side is said to be occupied by my landlady, who had the place built. However, she isn't scheduled to move the rest of her stuff in and begin living there for a couple of weeks. She's waiting for her lease to end. Even though my new place is only a few minutes from the edge of town, it feels much more isolated. I enjoy the seclusion of my new home and its proximity to a more natural setting. I'm surrounded by woods, and from my patio, I can even see a pond beyond the carefully landscaped lawn, which is meticulously carved out from the surrounding woodlands. Just like the pond near my grandmother's house, the frogs have put up a ferocious racket lately. I prefer not to pay to run my air conditioning if I can help it, so I have every window open to catch a breeze. That means I can hear them as clearly as if I were standing on the water's edge. It took a few days to get used to that noise, but I'm fine now, just like I was those summers when I was young. In fact, noise has been comforting me during the stress of the move. Tonight is different. I find myself standing in my living room, staring at where the pond is, though I can't see it in the dark. The air is eerily still and oppressively warm, but all my windows are shut. I feel impossibly cold. I'd long since convinced myself that my grandmother's story had been a silly tale, a twisting of an old legend by a irreverent storyteller. But for some reason, I have the most overwhelming sense of dread growing in the pit of my stomach. I don't know what to do. I'm trapped. Leaving my house means braving the darkness beyond my home, but I don't know if I'm going to be safe in here either. The frogs have stopped singing. And that was Wendigo Encounters and Wendigo Stories. What'd you guys think? I think they're both pretty good. I think the first one is more of my favorite than the second one. Second one's kind of short. I also wanted to say that I spoke to the author of the first story, Wendigo Encounters. All of his links will be in the description, of course, including the links to Wendigo stories. I couldn't find the author there, but I spoke to the author of Wendigo Encounters. Seems like a cool guy. Make sure you go check out his stuff. He gave me permission, obviously, to cover his story. Make sure you guys go check out his stuff and the other author's stuff. Link in the description, as always. I decided to do these stories because, as you know, well, maybe you don't know, but I know, this week, the Until Dawn movie comes out. I'm a big fan of the game. I wanted to do a video on Until Dawn as a game. I might wait a little while just so like the movie comes out. I can watch it, decompress, etc., etc. And of course, I'm obviously up here, which you'll see where I am. I'll tell you guys where I am tomorrow's video. But I hope you guys enjoyed these stories. Next week, you might not get a creepypasta reading. I don't know for sure yet. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And I'll see you on the next assignment. Peace out.